both thank you, for taking time out of your busy schedule. We are here to discuss Snapshot as part of THN's Road to Fright Fest series. It's kind of an annual thing that we do where we dig into some of the lineup to give attendees a better idea of what's playing. So I guess obviously the first obvious question is how are you feeling about the forthcoming screening? I know obviously, soon you've got the Edinburgh World Premiere, but how do you then feel about, going from there into Fright Fest?
I think we feel really excited.
Definitely.
I think it's really great being able to do Fright Fest at the end of August because we will have showcased the film to sort of cineast, cinephile crowd in Edinburgh, and then we can go to the genre crowd at Fright Fest. And the film does sort of circumnavigate both those things. It's an
Mm.
experimental, it's first feature film ever shot entirely in a pinhole camera style. So it is attractive to sort of cinephiles and cineasts and people who like experimental cinema, but also at the core of it is this very genre narrative, which is rooted in the Jack the Ripper murders, but from a female perspective.
And on that, I'd like to say, like, it's going to be, because it's in competition, it's going to be shown to an audience of people who aren't expecting to see a genre film, and then it's going to be shown to an audience who are very much love genre. So it's
Mm.
going to be, they're both going to be critical, but for completely different reasons. And the other thing that's lovely about screening at Fright Fest is that we've been going for years. I mean, we know so many people there. We have so many friends who are filmmakers, and we've seen so many films there. So it's wonderful to be, we were sat there last year in that screen and thinking, oh, wouldn't it be fantastic if we had Snapshot show here, and then this year we're going to see it there on that brilliant screen
Yeah.
in Leicester Square. So
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
it's
it's
going
going
to,
to be a bit of a pinch me moment in
yeah,
that
totally.
respect.
No, we can't wait to hear what audiences think, and those audiences are amazing. I remember I sit next to people and they've got a spreadsheet. They've got a spreadsheet and they've seen every single film at Fright Fest somehow. Like, and they're there also to see your film and the amount of detail that they show me, and they go like, look, look at this, and I'm like, wow, okay, like we are going to get a critical, we're going to a real interesting assessment from audiences, and we really look forward to the Q&A as well, like afterwards, and see what people think. No, very exciting, basically. Very, really looking forward to it.
So how is that experience been so far of going from, past attendee to now you're going with a film? I guess the prep for this has been slightly different to the normal, making sure that, you've got, your overnight bag or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, helps that I'm based in London, so we have a base there and we know the area and like having it shown in Leicester Square is like a really big deal. So I think in terms of like going from attendee to filmmaker, I think because it's such a welcoming festival, to be honest, I can already see that like, we might feel that it might be quite different, but actually I think at the heart of it, it will be these like sort of the Fright Fest community, and that's really what makes Fright Fest Fright Fest. So I think we're just really excited to show something very new and see how people react to it, because that's the thing. Um, I think that's another reassuring thing about being an attendee going is like what kind of crowd it is, and they're a really friendly, receptive crowd, and they're always up for something a bit different. Um, and that's why I think like that perspective of going as an attendee to a filmmaker is actually quite reassuring in some ways.
And the other thing is that we're a London production, like the film is
Yeah.
about London. Lots of like Cathy's from and based in London, and a lot of the cast and crew, up 90% of the team were London based or from there. So it'd be really nice. That audience will have a lot of those members in it. Of course, in Edinburgh, we've had the lead cast come up. But there will be a kind of stronger connection and dialogue to the Fright Fest audience. Maybe that's what I'll say. Because Edinburgh will be full of a very international audience of people who don't know us as well as maybe the Fright Fest crowd does. So that's going to be an interesting dialogue between the kind of audience and us throughout the thing. But in terms of prep, we're going to try and think of some really fun stunts we could potentially do, or posters.
We've
Or they'll show this, show off, show this.
we've got our newspaper, which is
Nice.
Snapshot illustrated news, which is based off the police news of the time, but it's all got little extracts from the film itself on it, so little scenes. So we'll be distributing these.
And this is Cathy has hand drawn this.
Yeah.
And
No AI slop.
no AI, no AI, it's like the absolute opposite, hours and hours of craftsmanship. Because also Cathy's great uncle was an illustrator for you explain.
Yeah, my Victorian ancestor was an illustrator for the Illustrated London News. So he actually worked for that paper during the time of the Jack the Ripper murders, I believe. Him and his brother actually worked for it.
And also Nadia, who's one of the actresses, her great grandfather was a policeman during the Jack the Ripper as well. Yeah.
I didn't know
Well,
that.
that she told that maybe you shouldn't tell you about it, but like they found an old document from their family, and it was him getting posted in Whitechapel, him getting moved from like Greenwich to Whitechapel during those years. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And Nadia will tell you
I
more
think
about that.
I think
Anyway,
a lot of Londoners would be surprised at actually how they have links to probably the Whitechapel murders in some weird way. Like I feel like they were such a big thing when they happened, and there was so much sensationalism and news, and so many people were working as police because they were posting more police there. So yeah, I think a lot of people would be surprised to find out that maybe they're actually a bit more connected than they think.
And the other thing to be said is that we're like closing the discovery section in screen one, so we will have time to see other films. That's the other thing we're hoping to do is actually see, because that was the thing I was slightly worried about was we'd be too focused on prepping, but actually kind of now we know with the kind of last ones, we know we've got one screening, it's right at the end, and then we can try and schedule in other things because the see some shorts. It's usually quite exhausting watching like hours and hours of horror shorts kind of back to back. It's
Lots
quite
of jump scares.
lots of just repeatedly weirder and wilder concepts to be overloaded by. So I get quite over, like I have to sort of space those out. But anyway, it's quite different, but Fright Fest is its own kind of it's just a delightful thing it's just a really great thing to go to. So filmmaker or attendees. So, yeah, no, we're looking forward to it.
And how did the idea for the film come together?
It was a combination of things. So it was kind of um, the bigger context behind it was sort of me and Cathy have been wanting and we've been pitching features for a long time. And the question of money always comes up, like you're a new filmmaker, love these ideas. We think we'll make loads of money, but we can't trust you with money because you haven't made a feature before. And it's that horrendous, it'll never go away, this problem. But that thing of how do you get a job if you haven't had a job before? And same thing with this. So I kind of really thought like, look, okay, if money is the question and all the investors, that's what they just care about really when it comes down to it. They want to make a great film, but they also care about how the money gets spent. If I look at what have been the most profitable films of all time, and I pitched that kind of idea, and I've got that in my back pocket, what would that be? And it turns out the majority of the most profitable films of all time have been found footage films made by a debut director, and they're under $1 million, right? And I thought, well, what would my version of that film be? So I drew up some ideas. And then the question came up of kind of like, how do we do it? What do we do? What's the topic? And I was sort of thinking, well, what if we did do like the first ever found footage film? And the first cameras were being made in 1888.
The first portable cameras.
First portable cameras, yeah. First portable kind of moving image cameras were being made in those times.
The first portable cameras and then also moving images. They were coming out separately, so you were kind of like, oh, what would happen if someone was ahead of their time and sort of merged the two together?
And I was really looking into kind of the sort of well, basically it was I keep thinking the Victorian era is so similar to what we're going through now. Like huge changes in how people work and industry, mistrust, lots of talk about society and dialogue, lots of gender politics as well was going on. And cameras were a big part of actually independence and gender politics. And there was lots of these groups of women were setting up kind of photography groups and and filmography groups, and also spiritology, sorry, spirits groups, and also Christianity was slowly waning and more spiritualism was coming in. Huge, incredible time, but also there was these horrendous murders going on in the East End, and we were starting to see misinformation creep in because there were over 60 newspapers in London, and I'm a former newspaper journalist. So when all this kept on getting this research, and as I kept on, because we go to the Independent Horror Society, which is run by the fantastic team there, and I just kept on, people love Jack the Ripper, and I kept on thinking, that was in 1888, all this stuff was happening in 1888. What if we had an all-ladies ghost hunting society who are working with a man who's made the first portable moving image machine, and they're using it to try and get evidence about Jack the Ripper because they believe he's a ghost, not a man, because no man could be so devilish to do what they did. So it's trying to play with all of those ideas. I'd be an appropriate author because of my background in journalism and all the misinformation I saw. And we love all things Gothic. Literally, our company is called Silicon Gothic. So we thought this is the perfect project. And our unique signature would be the pinhole camera. And it's in 1988. And this was like, and then we could start to pitch to investors and go like, yes, it's very unique and creative, but very profitable. Look, in history tells us, because that's what they want to see. History tells us it'll be very, very profitable. In a 1 in a million chance, people might get it. And we're very, very lucky. We took the creative gamble to do something very, very unique and new. But luckily, people are starting to go, oh, actually, in a time of where there's so much regurgitated AI stuff, what we do want is something unique, genuinely unique and challenging. And it is an experience. It's a challenging experience watching Snapshot. I think certainly there needs to be an epilepsy warning on it. But like it'll be a case of like just make sure that we wanted to do something new, but also potentially something profitable. Because both me and Cathy have the production company, but also we're creatives. So it's that fine balance of things. But I know that's very complicated and all over the place, but that is sort of like with most how ideas start, it comes from lots of different places and all formulates, and you have that kind of eureka moment. I was in the kitchen, I was like, wait a second, what if we had these women who believe that Jack the Ripper's a ghost? What sort of guys made the first ever camera? And then it's this and it's this and it's this. And I was like, and I remember telling Cathy, what about this idea? And then we told all of our friends.
Well, that's the thing I wanted to add is that it was the development of the idea was also very rooted in the cast. Because I'm an actor and I've had the pleasure to work on lots of indie films. And I've worked with some really fantastic actors who've become really wonderful friends as well. And so we had an idea of sort of who we were sort of seeing as this all-ladies ghost hunting society at the core of the film. And we basically went to our friends who we wanted to work with and went, if you were in Victorian London, who would you be? And one of them said, I'd be an Irish immigrant and gang leader of an all-male gang. And then one of them was like, I'd be a brothel madame and I'd have like built my business up from the ground. And one of them went, I'd be a aristocratic spiritualist with a very suspicious past of being widowed 4 times. So there were all these amazing characters who were sort of arising out of our conversations with these fantastic cast members who are also fantastic creatives and storytellers in their own right. And so in that sense, the story, it's been developed in such a way that we were almost like the film, the storytellers of the story are actually kind of the women and Tamworth, which Joe also was the cinematographer.
Yeah, it's very fun.
So in many ways you were sort of Tamworth, who is the cameraman of the film. So yeah, it was a really interesting process to sort of build that up from the ground with the actors. And I think it really comes across in their performances because they're so invested and they're just so fantastic at their characters. They were right. If they were in Victorian London, I believe they would be those people.
Totally. Well, they are. They literally have decided to be. It's that thing of, and it was that lovely part. The other thing that's really nice for me is that kind of like they were all up for it. They're like, this is a really unique idea. I would love to be part of it. I'll do it for free. Then we started pitching to investors and we got some money. And so we're like, well, actually, guys, we can pay you a bit.
Yeah.
Let's all make this thing. So it was a really nice process. And I literally remember being in the old Red Lion pub talking to Laura Jean Marsh and Nadia, being like, got this crazy idea. Think it might work. I think we've just been to some sort of Gothic theatre event or something.
Was it my
Um,
show?
was it your show? It might have been your show.
Well, I think I did a
Uh,
show there and we were sort of trying to figure this out at the same time.
yeah,
Yeah.
winter about 2 years ago. Oh yeah, we got to do it. We got to do it. So it was a bit of a family project in a way, like friends and family project, but it's nice that it's getting out to a really big audience, and also that people seem to love the acting. That's something that has come back consistently with test screenings, is that people really connect with the acting. So no, we're very happy with that part of the project. Yeah, no, that's sort of the inception of how it came about.
Mm. And obviously, found footage, is there's so many different ways to go with found footage. And obviously, you guys have worked hard to, find your own areas, your own unique, your own
That's all.
unique angle, on this. Sorry, he's sneezing. Oh, I might
Oh.
don't feel sympathy for him. He's ruining the interview. Um, you know, obviously, found footage, it's so hard to kind of, think of something unique to
Yeah.
stand out. And obviously, you guys have, you found that hook, but then when it came to putting it into practicality, what did you find, were the advantages and, perhaps challenges of only having a certain amount of the
Yeah.
film in the image at any one time?
Yeah, exactly. So we had to think about from because I did the cinematography and the editing. It was a very you'll see the credits list and it's relatively short. That actually had lots of advantages as well as disadvantages. But in terms of really thinking about the principles of how this camera is going to work, like in sort of and constraints in the edits, we had to develop language um in terms of what the film is going to look like and be like. So the so we had to sort of stage shots in certain ways and kind of do the blocking to try and capture stuff in and kind of rehearse bits and work it out. And to be honest, like it was a case of um I'm trying to think of the best way to describe this. As the process went on, it kind of found more of what it was going to look like and be like. But we kind of had to realize that, look, our sources of light are going to be fireplaces, candles, and the sun. Like, so we have to use that to our advantage and to get really artsy about it, like looking at kind of how Vermeer did his paintings and how lots of artists in that time used natural light. And I was like thinking, well, if this guy's only had experience of people of, because electricity was just coming in. That's the other thing. This is what confuses people. And we might have people go, there's an electric light there. It's like, well, literally the policemen in the Jack the Ripper murders were using electric lights to try and search for stuff. Like they had batteries and they had and lamps and lights and everything. So it was a new thing coming along. But we didn't, we only, you only see a few of those in the film. But the point is that how do we motivate that light? So it's fireplaces, it was candles, they're stood next to windows. Because if you were an artist back then, that is how you would light your subject. So Tamworth, the cameraman would have to think, well, I'm going to have to light it this way. So you sort of had to get into the mindset of how a Victorian would film something, having never filmed something. And also for me, I had to do that throughout the filming process, like on that journey. And I think I would now knowing what I know, I would film it maybe differently, but that's why I'm really keen to do a sequel. I'm really keen to make another film because I feel like I learned what really works well and what doesn't work well. But that was part of the fun of the creative process.
I think
I
as
don't
well,
know. It's a tricky question, that.
with the motivation of the pinhole, obviously it was inspired by this 1888 camera that came out,
Yeah.
the Kodak #1, which could only take photos in a circle because it was a quality issue at the corners of the photograph.
Yeah.
And we kind of really liked that idea in that the film is about misinformation and it's all about what you can't see at the edges. And, we start a scene halfway through and we
Hmm.
finish it before it's ended. The As Joe was saying, it's quite an experience to watch it because we took some experience from the endless scroll of Instagram in the editing of the
Hmm.
film. I know you did. And also in the script writing of the film. I wrote parts of it which were, never completely get wound up or explained. But that is because that is how we see our information nowadays a lot on social media. It's a very intentional choice we made to make the film in this way. And the pinhole camera style does lend itself to that because it experiments with who's in frame, what you can see, what you can't see, what are you imagining is happening outside of frame, but also you're kind of forced into this awareness that that might not be correct because it's all about misinformation. So it is definitely an experience in that it forces the viewer into some quite uncomfortable and I would say quite disturbing positions where they're sort of forced into this awareness that, they're watching the film, but they're not in charge of the narrative. And that's the whole point of the film, is to question so that people walk out going, God, maybe I should question the narrative, because you suspend your disbelief going into a film. But, we're also suspending our disbelief as we look at news on social media. I think something crazy like 85% of 16 to 24-year-olds go to social media to get their news nowadays.
Which is
And
crazy.
it's just like we suspend our disbelief every day, all day, in many ways as people. But we want Snapshot to ask that question: who owns the truth and what will you believe? And just be careful as
Yeah,
well.
and in terms of like the found footage, there's quite sort of hidden in the first 10 minutes of the film are answers to stuff that happens right at the end of the film. And I think if you did go frame by frame through the film, people will eventually do this, but you find out what's actually going to happen in that first. It's all hidden there. And it kind of slightly reminds me of kind of Blair Witch, where they're doing these vox pops with people at the start of Blair Witch, and everybody kind of says what's going to happen. And there's like this one bit which I don't know who's watching this interview, but like I won't spoil it. But basically, somebody kind of says something which references like what is literally the final part of the film, and it's kind of like you might have missed that if you're just like walked into the cinema or you're not really paying attention yet, and you're like, what's going on with this film? You might have missed all those key little bits. And there's like one character who just says it. It's just like an off comment, but that kind of explains sort of what's going to like part of it, and that's sort of what we do a little bit in Snapshot in, I guess, like homage to the genre or whatever, and just using what's fun about that genre. But yeah, like I think it's a fantastic um, mode of filmmaking, really. It's really exciting and interesting. Like I sort of was trying to say earlier, I kind of really feel like I only kind of know the rules of Snapshot now and what works after going into the edit, thinking actually I really want to exploit those rules set up in Snapshot. Now I know them because I've now made the film. I really want to now do it in another film because it's sort of like I've certainly as it rolls out and people go, "Oh, I love that bit. I hated that bit. This bit worked. This bit done. Done.
This bit
This
done.
bit done. This bit done work." Try take all of that and make hopefully an even better film. So it's sort of it's a fantastic genre. Of course, people do it loads. There's loads of films out there. And there's even a Jack the Ripper film at FrightFest last year. I found footage of Jack the Ripper film last year. So they are happening. But hopefully everyone can bring something new. But I feel like, yeah, loved it. Love it. It's a fantastic, also so accessible. Like, it's such a fantastic genre and that allows people to get into filmmaking in a way. Anyway, there's loads you can say on that. We'll wrap up on that. Yeah.
But I think, in addition to the found footage, you do have the whole, time period aspect as well. And I mean, just through, our conversation, it's very clear that, you guys did, really research that era and stuff. And, you mentioned there, the haunting of Jack the Ripper played last year. What do you think it is about that time period in our country's history that has us all still so fascinated?
I think it's fascinating to us in many ways because it is so similar to the time we're living in now. I think, throughout history, we've gone through different phases of being interested in different historical periods. Like the Victorians were quite fascinated with the Tudors and with medieval people. And I remember listening to this podcast, I think, which was saying about how Victorians used to see Tudor ghosts. Because we were like, why do we see Victorian ghosts nowadays? So I think it's, it was in their subconscious because in the Tudor period there was the Enlightenment, there was loads happening which was new and new information, and times were changing, and they were in a similar period with the Industrial Revolution, and now we are in a similar period of change with tech and with, unfortunately, AI. And I think that just in the future, and humans will always look back to times of the past that were similar to the times they're living in now to try and get answers for the times they're living in now. It's quite reassuring in some ways sometimes to look back and see, oh yes, the Victorians had really unregulated newspapers and there was so much misinformation about, but they did regulate them eventually. And I think we're in a similar time now with social media. You know, we're seeing more and more regulation and policies made. We need more, and that's part of what we're doing with the film as well. We're actually partnering with Shout Out UK, which is an anti-disinformation enterprise. They've made these amazing Victorian-inspired leaflets about misinformation for us to distribute as well. But you know, I just think we're always looking back to history, and at Silicon Gothic, it's something we like to do. Is you know, me and Joe are both really into history and finding these stories set in these historical settings, but actually figuring out that the people back then really weren't that different to us, and humans have kind of always been this way, and that there are patterns that repeat themselves.
Yeah, and this is, I call it the second Gothic era. That's why I say to people is we're living through the second Gothic era. And in so many ways, like kind of Cathy has said, like, you know, there's these new factories, okay, data centers coming to space, and those old factories were polluting the water. These new factories are sucking it up. So it's a case of like, and they challenged that and people sorted it out. But there were narratives to communicate that. You had Mary Shelley and lots of fantastic Gothic writers who were communicating all these new things that were happening, and they were bringing new stories and new monsters to their audiences. We're wanting to do the same. We're wanting to kind of bring new monsters, and I mean that's what we try and do. Silicon Gothic is we like monsterify modern issues. So we wanted to bring that into there, and bring these new genres, these new stories to life. So then people can go, oh, wait, like this is how we need to communicate it. This is how we need to tell the story. We shouldn't listen to this oil company's PR team. We should be listening to artists who are trying to go, like, look, like, you know, this is how to actually look at it. Because unfortunately, that is what happens. It's about who controls the narrative, who tells the story. And the greatest freedom we have as you as a writer, Kat, and us as filmmakers, is to have the freedom to tell that dialogue. And unfortunately, things where you have generative AI that can make art, that is corporations trying to control the narrative, they think it's trying to give us the tools to do so, but it's a very backhanded way of actually wanting to control the thing, the one freedom we kind of have. So that is why we're very anti it. There's a bigger message going on, there's a bigger narrative going on here that we also want to try and use Snapshot to tap into. But no, it's you know, that's the sort of why I
Yeah.
think people really connect with that era, which was, you know, 140, you know, the sort of film is a very old medium. Like it was only started really in the Victorian era, and there's always new stories to tell. And I think it's kind of also the Victorians were just kind of very adventurous. Like, do you know what I mean? They're kind of big and boisterous, and it's kind of that sort of. I
Yeah.
think we're going through another one of those times where it's kind of like kind of people are trying to be you know, it's very lots of conflicting things going on. It's fascinating. Anyway, that's the big
Yeah.
time conflict. Yeah.
I think as well, just to add a tiny bit on the Jack the Ripper stuff itself, like as a why do we look back to that
Yeah.
as well? Of course, it's one of the biggest, most famous unsolved mysteries ever. Um, but I also think, you know, it's a part of history that has always been written by men for men in many ways. And like we set out in the writing of the film to give voice to the women at the heart of this story. And I think, unfortunately, it's also something we see today, you know, the patriarchy will always exist in some form, in that, like, we're seeing it now with the manosphere, for example, like
Mhm.
gendered violence has always existed. And we're in a very similar time, unfortunately, to the Victorian era in that sense as well. And that is something we also wanted to portray in the film. But also at the same time, the women at that time were so badass. Like lots of people just think they sort of sat around drinking tea. But I was reading about, because I did the costume design as well for the film with Lydia Helen, who's also one of the actors in the Ghost Hunting Society. And in 1890, so a couple years after the Ripper murders, though it was very in fashion for women to have these really ridiculously big sleeves because they just took up space, and it was the birth of the suffragette, and like it was a really great time for women in terms of like getting more rights and pushing for more rights. And there's even an early suffragette in the film played by Freya Parks. So I think, yeah, we just always look back to history and there's always lessons to learn from it, but also so many similarities.
Yeah, yeah. And obviously, you guys have been to Fright Fest before, so that at any one time, there's two or three films going on at once. Why do you both hope that people, take a chance and put Snapshot on their schedule, other than the fact that obviously you guys are coming armed with freebies, which, the Fright Fest family will really appreciate.
I think just come and see something new. It's the first pinhole
Unique,
camera in history. I mean, like the first pinhole camera feature film in history. So by seeing it at one of the first screenings, you are helping with that history and that narrative.
It is also the 31st of August is the anniversary of the first Jack the Ripper murder.
Yeah, which was purely a coincidence.
Purely a coincidence. When the Fright Fest people programmed it, we're like, wow, you're doing something really smart with this. And they were like, complete accident. So I know and also bizarrely, we're having like a kind of Victorian picnic and party event in Edinburgh, but we're doing it in a place called the Meadows in Edinburgh, and we're having it right next to the
Prince Albert Victor sundial, and we chose this place. And then I was like, this sort of rings a bell from all the research we were doing. And he was one of the like main conspiracy theory things
suspect,
for like who did the Jack the Ripper murders. I think he was one of the sons of Queen Victoria. But yeah, I think the reason why people should put it in their schedule is it is a new take on the Jack the Ripper narrative. Lena Langerbeck said that it gave voice to the women and a new kind of ghost story. So it is something very new. It's experimental. It plays with the format of filmmaking itself and this suspension of disbelief and narrative and all these ideas. So I think people will find something to relate to in it because many of the things in the Victorian era were very similar to today.
And this is that we've done test screenings and people find it really difficult to try and compare it to other films.
Yeah.
But I've got a feeling the Fright Fest crowd they know films. They'll be able to tell us like, oh, it's like this or it's like that, or they'll be able to find a way of telling us what the film is because we still don't know how to describe the film. So let us know after the screening. Tell us what it is. That'd be really helpful.
And for those that can't be at Edinburgh, that can't be at Fright Fest, where should people be looking online, for news of future festivals and eventual release? Where should they go?
Well, depending on we're announcing it very soon, but I don't know when are you putting this interview out, Fright Fest?
It will be before Fright Fest.
Okay, so well, anyway, the nice thing is we've had a sales agent come on board, which is really good, and we're in contact with lots of distributors. We've had really big distributors reach out to us. So like we won't say anything because it's kind of subject to announcements. But yes.
I think in terms of where people can see updates about the film, our website, www.snapshotfilm.co.uk, or our Instagram, which is @snapshot_1888. And we'll be posting loads of stuff on there. We're going to be launching a really fun, exciting new website as well, where you can even see some interviews, exclusive interviews.
It's like a map of London, and we've kind of got like bits of places where the found footage was like made and stuff. So it's kind of an interactive map, and it's really fun. Like no, Cathy has been leading that, and it's a really exciting way for audiences to kind of connect with the story, and they kind of can decide what they look at and how they view it and stuff. It's a really interesting way, and it includes exclusive interviews that weren't in the film. So it's kind of going to be a nice way of people to see more of the film in a different way.
Because it was
Yeah.
vast, the world that was built, because we worked so closely with the cast, was really vast. We have some amazing interviews on there as
We
well, which
have
look
loads. We have to cut
completely
so much.
improvised.
There's
Yeah,
lots of
we had to
improvised
cut a
bits.
lot. I think the first edit was like 2.5 hours long. So there was lots that was cut, but lots which we'll be showcasing online as well, because this world is bigger than just the feature film. There's a whole lore to it.
Mm.
Nice. Well, yes, I mean, it sounds like there's, going to be some, interesting news coming out soon. So people should, be following those socials and checking out the website. And yeah, thank you both for your time. Best of luck with Edinburgh and with screening at FrightFest.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you.